Thanks very much, Tim, and it's a real pleasure to be here. If we could move on to slide 3, please. Thank you very much. So Allup Silica, we're a very new company. We only listed in May of this year. We believe we have a very unique approach to business, and we do look at this as a real business opportunity. We have a combination of projects which involve access to ports or potential access to ports as we move forwards, because silica is a bulk commodity. So we have 2 projects to the north: Argyle up in the Kimberley region near Wyndham. Northern Territory, we've just recently applied for a tenement in the Northern Territory. And down in the south, we have the Southwest Silica project, which is where we started about 2 years ago with our first technical work. And I'll talk more about that shortly. And Esperance over near the Esperance port. So this company is really focused on projects, purity and ports. Next slide, thanks. So let's just start off with why silica and what is silica. Well, silica sand, it's kind of everywhere. However, to get high purity silica and the ability to mine high purity silica and then the ability to export it, that's where the business opportunity really exists, and that's what our focus is. In terms of silica supply, what we're seeing around the world is new government policies being put in place. This affects other commodities as well, and they're generally called strategic commodities now. And that is that we have government policies for renewable energy, et cetera, public demand for high technology opportunity or high technology technologies. And high purity silica is an integral part or an integral commodity used in many, many technologies and many, many applications. So semiconductors, computer processors, and sort of something more visible and more relevant and interesting today is, of course, photovoltaic cells or solar panels. And on that slide, there's just a snapshot there of a solar farm. All of those panels in that farm, which goes for many, many, many hectares, has silica glass covering and protecting the cells. So that gives you a visual indication of the sort of thing happening when we talk about solar farms. There's a lot of silica required, and the demands of that is very much high purity. Next slide, thanks. At the same time, there's actually more restrictions happening on existing suppliers. So existing suppliers have simplistically 2 components: a building commodity sort of bulk type sand, which is used in construction industry, cement in particular, and then a smaller but focused, if you like, high purity silica sand, which is the very white sand we'll talk about through this presentation. Interestingly enough, there are trends not just for recycling certain commodities, but also including recycling cement. And there's certainly some countries in Europe now which is aiming for 100% recycling of cement with a view to minimising or eliminating completely sand mining. So, of course, as these countries reduce their sand mining, the availability and supply of that high purity silica, just as a little component coming off the edge of the construction sand mining industry, that's going to drive demand and prices, we think, moving forwards. And then there's other factors, of course, coming into play in terms of environmental restrictions on traditional sand mining areas across the globe. Next slide, thanks. So let's just talk a little bit about us and what we're doing in Australia. Sparkler is the project in the southwest that we started with. And we've done some initial work there, I'll show shortly. Sparkler is situated next to a major highway, which actually runs through to Bunbury to the north and Albany to the east. And both ports have the capacity for 50, 60,000 tonne ships. Both are involved in exporting a variety of commodities, both agricultural and mining. And so our project there, easy trucking distance to both ports. So we see real potential in Sparkler, and we'll be drilling that again shortly. Next slide, thanks. So in terms of Sparkler, what it looks like, and this gives an indication of the business, the slide on the top right there, that's the sort of land and the land value that we're looking at, where we think the value of that land is better realised to have at least cohabitation mining project, along with perhaps the agricultural application. And you can see a handful of sand literally that grabbed from that site location. And this is one of the areas, our first area, where we have a 70 million tonne JORC resource as our first resource estimate. We did that drilling because we could see high purity silica there. And when we say high purity, it's above 99.5% silica, and the potential also to reduce it below 100 parts per million iron. So stage 1's complete, and we've got our initial resource estimate there, and we're going in for further drilling, as I mentioned. Next slide, thank you. So in terms of the previous work, the little orange balls there on that map is where we've drilled before, and we can see good sand thicknesses and good purity over good widths. The 17 metres at 95%, for example, the 95, 97, 96%, that's raw silica grade, so that's got other material mixed in with it because that's just how it presents in nature. I'll talk a little bit about that as well today. So very happy with that. We're planning to get in there and infill drill in and around that area shortly, and then also to drill further afield and expand that resource potential further. Next slide, thanks. Now to move across towards Esperance, which is our second project. Esperance has 2 ELs granted that potentially feed into it. One's Dune Buggy down to the south, and the other one's Pink Bark further up to the north. Dune Buggy, which is sort of highlighted there in the bottom picture, is a sand mass with good clean sand and a substantial tonnage potential. We've done a drone survey over that, 470 million cubic metres indicated from that drone 3D survey. So we've got metallurgical test work underway to see what we can do with that sand in terms of optimising its potential value. Next slide, thanks. And up at Pink Bark, up in the wheat belt to the north, it's 20 kilometres to the railway line and then 90 kilometres down to port at Esperance. Again, 95, 96, 97, 98% raw silica sand that we've seen at surface. And that second picture there is an auger drill hole that we've drilled. And again, you can see just visually pretty clean sand. It's sort of got that white greyish colour, which is what we're looking for on our first searching. We've had previous drilling there that indicates sand 14 metres in depth, previous drilling by other operators who are actually looking for base metals in the basement underneath the sand mass. So we think we've got real potential for a significant volume and tonnage of sand and good quality specifications here at Pink Bark. Next slide, thanks. So Cabbage Spot up near Wyndham. Wyndham Port's terrific, a lot of available capacity there, and we're just in the final stages of getting all the permits and approval and land council access to that. So we hope to be drilling that next year. Next slide, thanks. So in terms of high purity silica, on the left-hand side, you can see the raw sand, which has got that sort of, you know, when you take a photo, the greyish colour. Then on the right-hand side, you can see just for simple gravity and washing and magnetic separation, we're getting very high purity silica on the right-hand side with those pictures taken through a microscope. Next slide, thanks. So for the company moving forwards, it's very simple. Drilling, metallurgical test work, it's been underway this year and continued to do so. We've got drill-ready targets that we're lining up for the drill season in the south coming up this summer. And then in the north will come up in the next winter time. And then further metallurgical sampling, you know, with a view to producing customer bulk samples that we'll be looking forward to sending off to potential customers that have already reached out to us over the last 12 months. So lots of activity, lots of news across multiple projects. And really for us, it's about de-risking the company and de-risking our business by having these multiple projects and seeing literally which one can we bring into production first, which will be the quickest, and then of course, which will be the most profitable, and then further projects to follow. Next slide, thank you. In terms of board of directors, great experience, combination of business and technology, or business and geotech capability. Next slide, thank you. A detailed slide there just for investors to have a look at. That's a summary of market caps of our peer group. We're by far the lowest market cap, being, I guess, the newest entrant into the market since May. And we're looking forwards to playing catch up in our business as we progress over the next year or two with our work that I've just touched on. Next slide, thank you. So share price was a 20-cent IPO. Poor timing, not our choice with the May float. Market cap, I think, sitting around $7 or $8 million on current share price, 84 million shares on issue, very clean. Cash in the bank just under $5 million. Next slide, thank you. So why Allup Silica? We're a very low-priced investment opportunity in the market. Why silica? It's an essential component for electronics, computers, renewable energy, etc. The renewable investment space, it's a good place to be with all the government momentum behind all these renewable technologies. It's going to be continuing for quite some time. What's driving silica prices? It's a lack of supply and a massive increase in demand driven by policy. Demands of environmental and social responsibility. It means that we've got our work cut out for us and we're up to the challenge. And purity in port, that's the solution that we're working towards. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for your time. Quite a few questions here. Can you talk about the pricing of silica sand? Obviously, you're going to the high purity end of the scale, I suppose. And can you talk through the supply-demand dynamics? How is it priced?
Well, pricing is direct to customer, so it's very opaque. You know, a lot of those negotiations are private and not publicly disclosed. Traditionally, a lot of the silica sand mining occurs either in private family companies or large multinationals that don't report on pricing. So I think the sort of indications that we're getting, as well as some of the other Australian emerging producers, is pick a number between 40 US a tonne and 100 US a tonne, somewhere in that vicinity. And then that's really driven by your purity as to whether you're pushing up towards the high value, high price product, or whether you're going to produce a lower quality product. Iron seems to be certainly the driver, especially in photovoltaics and some of the other potential customer demand areas. So to get below 100 ppm iron is the challenge. And that's also the opportunity where prices can be quite high. So a lot of what's happening in the silica market today is very analogous to the iron ore market 30 and 40 years ago. It was very similar for the early iron ore producers in Australia.
And just as a reminder, who dominates in this space as a global player these days?
Well, I guess the global seaborne player, at least certainly that's familiar to some Australians, is up in far north Queensland, and it's a Japanese silica mine that's been owned and operated by the Japanese for, I think, 100% for at least 20 years, and previously started by Australians. And of course, that silica sand mine up at Princess Charlotte Bay on Cape York has been supplying the Japanese industry for high purity silica, which of course we buy that back in the form of various products. Our Australian high purity silica comes back in high value add products for consumers.
And where does China sit in this market?
Well, China's like just about every commodity now, depending on which commodity, 60% plus of world consumption of a raw commodity, whether it's iron ore or silica or rare earths. Rare earths I have even a higher position. So China's 60+%. And of course, it's growth in Chinese manufacturing. The Chinese are very ahead of the curve in terms of solar panel production, you know, which follows on quite logically from TV panel production. If you look at what's happened with our TV panels at home.
And where can you talk us through the kind of mining process and where's the export market for Allup?
Well, the mining process is beautiful. It's there's no drill and blast. It's free dig. It is sand. It is the ultimate simple mining process. You know, which some of us experience as children on the beach with a shovel and a bucket. I mean, it's just a bigger version of a shovel and a bucket. And then it's really just a matter of putting it through a wash plant, spirals and magnets to get that purity and that cleanliness of the product, if you like. And then export markets, well, first step is to get it to port and have the port capacity then to ship. So whilst China dominates with 60+% of world demand, there's plenty of other countries through Asia and ASEAN countries, as well as in Europe and America, of course, where they're all sensitive now to critical minerals and also understand that they need to actually revisit their manufacturing capability and have sources of supply from friendly countries like Australia.
And where are you with, I know it's very early days, offtake agreements? Are you getting a lot of interest?
I've actually been astonished as to the amount of interest. For a year and a half now, we've had door knocks being through email from various consumers, glass makers and so on, asking what purity, how many tons, and when can we start delivering. So they're asking exactly the right questions. And we've just literally been saying, well, just give us a chance to get ourselves floated, which we've just done. We'll be deploying the capital that we've raised into feasibility study work, and then answering exactly those questions for the consumers as well as for the shareholders. So we think there's a real business opportunity and many customers to talk to. So while China dominates, there's many other people out there in different countries also that need silica for glass manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a move away from China as the sole source of supply for lots of different commodities at the moment. Andrew, that's all we have time for. Fascinating story. Love to get you back on perhaps later in the year.
I look forward to it, Tim, and thanks, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure.